Skepticism is not sleep, and in casting a doubt on any belief, or proving the absurdity of any idea, the skeptic is by no means losing his sense of what is proposed. He is merely doubting or denying the existence of any such object. In skepticism, therefore, everything turns on the meaning of the word existence, and it will be worthwhile to stop a moment here to consider it further. I have already indicated roughly how I am using the word existence, namely to designate such being as is in flux, determined by external relations, and jostled by irrelevant events. Of course, this is no definition. The term existence is only a name. In using it, I am merely pointing out to the reader, as if by gesture, what this word designates in my habits of speech. As if, in saying Caesar, I pointed to my dog, lest someone should suppose I meant the Roman Emperor. The Roman Emperor, the dog, and the sound Caesar are all indefinable, but they might be described more particularly by using other indicative and indefinable names to mark their characteristics or the events in which they figured. So the whole realm of being, which I point to when I say existence, might be described more fully. The description of it would be physics, or perhaps psychology, but the exploration of that realm, which is open only to animal faith, would not concern the skeptic. The skeptic turns from such indefinite, confusing objects to the immediate, to the datum, and perhaps for a moment he may fancy he has found true existence there. But if he is a good skeptic, he will soon be undeceived. Certainly, in the immediate, he will find freedom from the struggle of assertion and counter-assertion. No report there, no hypothesis, no ghostly reduplication of the obvious, no ghostly imminence of the not given. Is not the obvious, you might ask, the truly existent? Yet the obvious is only the apparent, and this in both senses of this ambiguous word. The datum is apparent in the sense of being self-evident and luminous, and it is apparent also in the sense of merely appearing and being unsubstantial. In this latter sense, the apparent threatens to become the non-existent. Does not the existent profess to be more than apparent? To be not so much the self-evident as that which I am seeking evidence for, in the sense of testimony. Is not the existent, then, which from its own point of view, or physically, is more than the apparent, cognitively, and from my point of view, less than the apparent? Does it not need witnesses to bear testimony to its being? And what can recommend those witnesses to me, except their intrinsic eloquence? I shall prove no skeptic if I do not immediately transfer all my trust from the existence reported to the appearance reporting it, and substitute the evidence of my senses for all lawyers' evidence. I shall forget the murders and imbroglios talked about in the court, and gaze at the judge in his scarlet and ermine, with the pale features of an old fox under his gray wig, at the jury and the stolidity, at the witness stammering, at the consul officially insolent, not thinking of what he is saying mechanically, but whispering something that really interests him in an aside, almost yawning, and looking at the clock to see if it is time for luncheon, and at the flood of hazy light falling aslant on the whole scene from the high windows. Is not the floating picture in my waking trance the actual reality, and the whole world of existence and business but a perpetual fable which this trance sustains? The theory that the universe is nothing but a flux of appearances is plausible to the skeptic. He thinks he is not believing much in believing it. Yet the residuum of dogma is very remarkable in this view, and the question at once will assail him how many appearances he shall assert to exist, of what sort, and in what order, if in any he shall assert them to arise, and the various hypotheses that may be suggested concerning the character and distribution of appearances will become fresh data in his thought. He will find it impossible to decide whether any such appearances, beyond the one now passing before him, are ever actual, or whether any of the suggested systems of appearances actually exist. Thus, existence will loom again before him as something problematical, at a distance from that immediacy into which he thought he had fled. Existence thus seems to re-establish itself in the very world of appearances, so soon as these are regarded as facts and events occurring side by side or one after the other. In each datum, taken separately, there would be no occasion to speak of existence. It would be an obvious appearance. Whatever appeared there would be simply and wholly apparent, and the fact that it appeared, which would be the only fact involved, would not appear in it at all. This fact, the existence of the intuition, would not be asserted until the appearance ceased to be actual, and was viewed from the outside as something that presumably had occurred, or would occur, or was occurring elsewhere. In such an external view, there might be truth or error, not so in each appearance taken in itself, because in itself, and as a whole, each is a pure appearance, and bears witness to nothing further. Nonetheless, when some term within this given appearance comes to be regarded as a sign of some other appearance not now given, the question is pertinent whether that other appearance exists or not. Thus, existence and non-existence seem to be relevant to appearances insofar as they are problematical and posited from outside, not insofar as they are certain and given. Hence, an important conclusion, which at first seems paradoxical, but which reflection will support, namely, that the notion that the datum exists is on meaning, and if insisted upon, is false. That which exists is the fact that the datum is given at that particular moment and crisis in the universe. The intuition, not the datum, is the fact which occurs. And this fact, if known at all, must be asserted at some other moment by an adventurous belief which may be true or false. That which is certain and given, on the contrary, is something of which existence cannot be predicated, and which, until it is used as a description of something else, cannot be either false or true. I see here how halting is the skepticism of those modern philosophers who have supposed that to exist is to be an idea in the mind, or an object of consciousness, or a fact of experience, if by these phrases no more is meant than to be a datum of intuition. If there is an existence at all, presence to consciousness is neither necessary nor sufficient to render it an existence. Imagine a novelist whose entire life was spent in conceiving a novel, or a deity whose only function was to think a world. That world would not exist any more than the novel would comprise the feelings and actions of existing persons. If that novelist, in the heat of invention, believed his personages real, he would be deceived. And so would that deity, if he supposed his world to exist merely because he thought of it. Before the creation could be actual, or the novel historical, it would have to be enacted elsewhere than in the mind of its author. And if it was so enacted, it would evidently not be requisite to its existence that any imaginative person, falsely conceiving himself to be its author, should form an image of it in his mind. If he did so, that remarkable clairvoyance would be a fact requiring explanation, but it would be an added harmony in the world, not the ground of its existence. If, for the sake of argument, I accept the notion that presence to intuition is existence, I may easily disprove it by reductio ad absurdum. If nothing not given intuition can exist, then all those beliefs in existing facts beyond my intuition, by which thought is diversified when it is intelligent, would be necessarily false. and all intelligence would be illusion. This implication might be welcome to me, if I wish not to entertain any opinions which might conceivably be wrong. But the next implication is more disconcerting, namely, that the intuitions in which such illusion appears can have no existence themselves. For being instances of intuition, they could not be data for any intuition. At one moment, I may believe that there are, or have been, or will be other moments, but evidently they would not be other moments if they are data to me now and nothing more. If presence to intuition were necessary to existence, intuition itself would not exist. That is, no other intuition would be right in positing it, and as this absence of transcendence would be mutual, nothing would exist at all. And yet, since presence to intuition would be sufficient for existence, anything mentionable would exist without question. The non-existent could never be thought of. To deny anything, if I knew what I was denying, would be impossible, and there would be no such thing as fancy, hallucination, illusion, or error. I think it is evidently necessary to revise a vocabulary which lends itself to such equivocation, and if I keep the words existence and intuition at all, to lend them meanings which can apply to something possible and credible, I therefore propose to use the word existence in a way consonant, on the whole, with ordinary usage, to designate not data of intuition, but facts and events believed to occur in nature. These facts or events will include, first, intuitions themselves, or instances of consciousness, like pains and pleasures, and all remembered experiences and mental discourse, and second, physical things and events, having a transcendent relation to the data of intuition, which, in belief, may be used as signs for them, the same transcendent relation which objects of desire have to desire, or objects of pursuit to pursuit. For example, such a relation as the fact of my birth, which I cannot even remember, has to my present persuasion that I was once born, or the event of my death, which I conceive only abstractly, to my present expectation of some day dying. If an angel visits me, I may intelligibly debate the question whether he exists or not. On the other hand, I may affirm that he came in through the door, that is, that he existed before I saw him, and I may continue in perception, memory, theory, and expectation to assert that he was a fact of nature. In that case, I believe in his existence. On the other hand, I may suspect that he was only an event in me, called a dream, an event not at all included in the angel as I saw him, nor at all like an angel in the conditions of his existence, and, in this case, I disbelieve my own vision, for visiting angels cannot honestly be said to exist if I entertain them only an idea. Existences, then, from the point of view of knowledge, are facts or events affirmed, not images seen or topics merely entertained. Existence is accordingly not only doubtful to the skeptic, but odious to the logician. To him it seems of a truly monstrous existence and superfluity in being, since anything existent is more than the description of it, having suffered an unintelligible emphasis or materialization to fall upon it, which is logically inane and morally comic. At the same time, existence suffers from defect of being an obscuration. An ideal nature, such as might be exhaustively given in intuition, when it is materialized, loses the intangibility and eternity proper to it in its own sphere, so that existence doubly injures the forms of being it embodies by ravishing them first and betraying them afterwards. Such is existence, as approached by belief and affirmed in animal experience. But I shall find, in the sequel, that, considered physically, as it is unrolled amidst the other realms of being, existence is a conjunction of natures in adventitious and variable relations. According to this definition, it is evident that existence can never be given in intuition, since no matter how complex the data may be, and no matter how many specious changes it may picture, its specious order and unity are just what they are. They can neither suffer mutation nor require new relations, which is another way of saying that they cannot exist. If this whole evolving world were merely given an idea, and were not an external object, posited in belief and in action, it could not exist nor evolve. In order to exist, it must enact itself ignorantly and successively, and carry down all ideas of it in its own current.